Oh. Oh. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Shanti.
Gosh, thank you so much. Looking forward to this conversation today.
Me too.
Prakash and I are neighbors, so we get to have many wonderful interactions. This one will be for you, for the listener. Prakash, I want to start out by asking you about yoga. I think there's a lot of different definitions that people have. I'm curious how you would define what yoga is.
What's important to me about defining yoga's unity. And the way it works in my life is I'm always trying to look for the ways in which my own mind can get away from the thought of that unity. And that even in the midst of disagreement, we're all one, basically. So I believe in that, the unity that is yoga. And everything else that we do in yoga practice. And I love yoga, all the different aspects of integral yoga. Everything that we do is to bring us back to that unity with one another, the whole of this crazy world and universe. That's what I think about yoga in a nutshell, in a little nutshell.
So I think if I understood correctly, even it's important to you, the movement from the thought of the unity into the experience of the unity. Is that what you're saying?
100%, because, I can talk about philosophy until I turn blue, but what am I doing with all of that? That's what's important to me, how it works in our lives as individuals, not what somebody else dictates to you, but how it's working for you, for me, for everyone. It's up to each one of us to examine that and really work the different aspects of yoga to help us look within ourselves and be constantly learning and refining and clarifying and playing with it all. So.
And one of the things that you're learning is the movement from the thought into like a felt experience. Is that what you would say? Would you have different words for what is it that you're trying to practice?
Okay. I'm trying to practice basically, I would say Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is the name for the study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And I'm sure probably your listeners all know that, and you know that. And I really take that to heart. I've been studying, my father introduced me to the Patanjali Sutras. I think I was someplace in my teens or my early 20s. I think I was still a teenager when he shared with me the book, How to Know God, which is Christopher Isherwood and Swami Prabhavananda. And it's the Yoga Sutras. It's a beautiful, if anybody is interested, it's really a beautiful little book. It's very easy to read. Some of you probably know who Christopher Isherwood was. He was a very famous writer of my parents' generation. And his guru was Swami Prabhavananda. So they wrote it together. It's lovely. It's simple. It's easy. So that was my first intro to the Yoga Sutras, and I still love that book. I have 2 bookshelves here with books on the sutras, different books, because I think to really look at it, it's important for us to look at different ways people comment on it. That I don't want to spend a lot of time repeating things everybody knows, if they know this, but what we call Raja Yoga is the study of those sutras. The sutras are very short, simple statements, like a sentence, and the books, and there's some of them are very nice fat books, some they're smaller and smaller. The books are someone's commentary on it. So when we're studying those sutras, if I'm teaching a Raja Yoga class, I like to bring a nice stack of Raja Yoga books. And when we're analyzing it together, we can say, what did Swami Prabhavananda say? Swami Satchidananda said. Here's another person, Nischala Devi. Gosh, I just heard of another person I respect who had written a commentary. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, just look for them if you're interested in doing this. And it's nice to, what did this person say about that sutra? Okay, let's look at how this person spoke about that sutra. And in that kind of study, and I mean, I do it for myself. I'm not just doing it when I'm in a class. In that study, and looking at different ways people say it, there are things that will jump out to you, I think, and say, clarify it in a way none of the other commentaries did. But that doesn't mean that commentary is the only commentary. There's a lot of really good ones. And so I do that. So the study is, to come back to your question, the study is very important to me. I really, when I'm having conflicts in my life, I really like to say, am I looking at this situation with ahimsa, which is non-injury, non-violence, not causing fear and not feeling fear, ahimsa. And it's constant reflection. I'd like to bring things back to that. And I think actually this person, I'm having a conflict with them. Am I thinking kindly of them? Am I coming a little bit out of my head and back into my heart to just feel that connection? We may not see eye to eye or brain to brain, but what's going on in the heart? And I feel that's a beautiful way to deal with conflict, whether with a colleague, with a friend, and certainly with an intimate partner, to come back to that place in the heart. It's a challenge. It's not like something we perfect. Maybe by the end of life, I don't know. But it's really worthy of constant reflection and contemplation. And even I have a chronic illness. I've had it for 20 years, but you see, I'm of a certain age, so I had a lot of years without a chronic illness. And when it came upon me, and it came upon me very strong, it really threw me for a loop. I couldn't do asanas, yoga poses, anything. And it really, really messed me up. And for a while, and then I began to say, come on, Prakash, you have all the tools. Come on, girl, you can do this. And I began to bring in all those yoga teachings, mostly from, there's a lot of yoga teachings, but coming back to the Yoga Sutras, there's a lot of helpers in there, I think, for daily life. And I began to be able to come back in touch with myself beyond the physical body. Not that this was some fabulous transcendent experience. It's just in a very simple way. Come on, I do believe in these teachings. I do believe this. We have a body, we have a mind. We're not the body and the mind. They deserve to be respected and taken care of, though. And I began to really appreciate my body, which was suffering quite a lot, and began to find new ways to work with it for myself, my particular individual condition and challenges and triumphs. So I just gave you a very long answer, Avi.
So I'm curious, like how it works. There's these spiritual texts, take the Yoga Sutras and you study it. And like you said, there's one line, maybe you could provide even, an example of a line that really means a lot to you. So going back to what you said about moving, from the mind into an experience, or the mind from the mind to the heart, and that's, your practice. So how does that work exactly? Like you're studying these texts, you read the translation from Patanjali, and then you read the commentary, and then what's the next step? Is the next step, sitting with it for a while? I mean, do you allow it to just hit you and allow yourself to have an experience? Because, again, it's interesting that you say the practice is moving from the mind into a full experience, or into the heart, right? And then that your main practice is to study Raja Yoga. And study, I would say, usually, you think of study and you think the mind is studying, right? But it's, from what you're saying, you're using the mind to move beyond the mind. Is that right? So can you explain a little bit more of how that process works for you?
Well, first of all, it's individual. I know what works for me. But let's see. Rather than thinking of it being a constant study, I think for me anyway, it means to keep trying to live it. Live these principles that I believe in. There's one, it's so many people's favorite sutra that people start to take it for granted, but it's deep, deep, deep. It's typically referred to as the 4 locks and the 4 keys, or I don't know if it's typically, but it's often referred to that way, because Swami Satchidananda used to say there's 4 locks, and here are the 4 keys in that one sutra. And on the surface of it, it sounds simple, and you say, okay, I got it. I'm going to be honest. These are also not, let's see, let me back up a second. That one sutra and the yamas and niyamas, which are the ethical teachings. When we first look at these, they seem, okay, I've heard this kind of thing before. And okay, I got it. I've seen a lot of people say they studied Raja Yoga and say, yeah, I know all that. I know all that. Well, you don't know it all because you haven't taken it in and put it into your life. For me, it's living it and not expecting perfection. It's, to me, this is living, ongoing study. That's why I use the word reflection a lot, not just the intellectual study, but living it. So I think to myself, well, I think I already said it, Avi, just an example. When I'm having a conflict with someone, I try to look into also, I'll hear something people can probably relate to, a particular politician or some other person saying something I really, really, really don't agree with. I don't even know this person. Why should I be friends with them? But what is it in that's got me so upset, that's thrown me off base so much? Yeah, I hate hearing that kind of stuff. But why is it throwing me off balance? Because, and that's important. I mean, not that I'm trying to bring myself into an agreement with something, with an opinion I don't like. But the more I can be in balance, and believe me, I'm not always in balance, but the more I can be in balance, the more I can be useful. And the more clearly I can look into something and say, is there something I can do to help with this change? There's been a horrible, horrible earthquake at the time we're recording in Morocco. It's terrible. And then there's tragedies where one person dies. It doesn't make the news as big, but it hurts someone just as much. Anyway, am I going to be completely unnerved by that? And I feel let my own sense of empathy with the suffering, which I don't want to take it away, that feeling of empathy and care. However, am I going to go off balance with that so that I can't clearly see, is there a way I can help here? What can I do? Not what should I do, not what I wish I could do. What can I do? To me, using these teachings, I hope I'm making some sense here, Avi. To me, using those teachings, all the different teachings from the Yoga Sutras, again and again and again. I've been doing this for over 50 years, and I'm still not perfect in any way. So, just looking at a situation and find, where am I off balance here? Not what somebody else tells me is off balance. I know, I look inside. I recognize it as soon as it starts to happen. That's why when I mentioned a politician, we all have those that set off something in us, and an indignation and so on. It's fine to want to vote against it, talk against it, and so on. But I need the clarity. I do for sure. I need mental clarity. And I'm not going to get that if I'm not in at least a little bit of balance with it.
So you're saying that, you see it as maybe your primary job or even responsibility to kind of monitor yourself. And so that's the top in terms of where you want to put your attention. And you see, okay, some external stimulation cause me to go off balance. And I'm noticing myself that I'm out of balance. And therefore my practice is to return to a place of balance, to attempt to.
First of all, I think the primary thing is to be useful to other people, useful in the world, wherever, in our tiny, tiny, tiny little niches, be as useful as we can, to be kind.
Right. So that's the purpose behind the monitoring of yourself or doing all
right. And also
trying to be to be a good instrument.
To be a good instrument, as good an instrument as I can be. And got to be careful about comparing ourselves to other people. But, I can never be as wonderful as Mother Teresa, or whoever comes to mind as someone who might seem perfect. That idea of perfection, and we get something in our minds, but in the midst of our humanity, which is we as human beings, we can be learned, we can have many, many, many life experiences, but we're human beings, and we're subject to some of the human frailties. So even then, I don't think I aim to not be judgmental with myself when I see that in myself, but to work with it. I think I'm not answering your question, Avi.
Well, no, I think that's a really important part, is not to, okay, it's like, so the question is, no, I'm glad what you brought up here, because I think it's really, really important.
Okay.
So something happened that throws me off. And so the first step is just awareness that I'm off, which I say is already a victory, to be aware that I'm off. Then my goal is to be, on or as close to on as possible, well balanced, a clean instrument, whatever the words are. And why? So that I can serve, because I believe that if I'm, a clean instrument, if I'm healthy myself, that's going to, be of the most good to others. Okay. And so then it's a matter of, how do I do that? And then you bring up this very important point, I think, because when I'm off, and then I'm aware that I'm off, and then I judge myself as being bad that I'm off.
Yeah.
What I found, and I think maybe all of us find, is then that's a spiral into another place that's not going to help me, get back to a state of balance. So I think that point that you make of the judgment that I can have for myself is such a barrier between me and actually achieving what I want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely, Avi. Yeah. And I think there's some kind of human tendency, because I've seen it so much in my life. I mean, I've done it too, to find someone that you admire. You see someone you admire, you read a book by someone you admire, and you interact with someone you admire. You think, oh my goodness, they're so wonderful, they're so perfect. And I want to be like that person. Then you find out the person who is so wonderful, we see this all the time. Sports figures, famous conductors, and others who made a big mistake. We all make big mistakes. We human creatures make big mistakes, all of us. We often don't hear about others' big mistakes, but we all make them. And we make plenty of small mistakes. And I think we've got to keep our sense of humor. It's just, so many times over the years, newer students coming to meditation have said, "Oh, I've been meditating for a year now, and my mind is still full of this and that and the other thing." And they're just really kind of torturing themselves about how imperfect they are. And we've got to keep a sense of humor about it. I don't often like to say we've got to, but honestly, that's one I'll say. You got to keep a sense of humor. The mind is full of stuff. It's not our enemy. It's serving its purpose. But if we focus on what's wrong with ourselves, we're really bringing it out more and more. We're also encouraging it. It's like there's this monster who's saying, "Oh, you did it this time, and you have done this before. You did it again. You're just stupid." That voice, if we take it seriously, it's like the monster grows in its own purpose. And if we could just say, "Yeah, you're right, I did it again," and have some humor. Having humor does not mean you're trivializing something, at least to me. It's have some humor about it and say, "Yeah, look at that. That's my mind. I went there again. I got myself into that mess again." And okay, if you're going to analyze, first of all, just try to bring out a little sense of, okay, that I went to a place that I shouldn't have gone, and mentally or whatever. And just how can I come back to center? I think the more relaxed we are with what we're doing in the world, the more we, first of all, advance spiritually, and also have fun and adventure, and hopefully along the way can be useful to people once in a while.
I love this so much. Thank you. It's really a gift, I think, when someone reminds me, that's how I feel, to keep things light and playful and have a sense of humor about it all. It's just something happens within myself where I just kind of like open up and just relax. Like, yeah, like there's me trying to be perfect again, or there's me judging myself again, like whatever it is. Like you said, you're reminding me of something I heard recently about, I think it's the Lakota tribe. And they used to have someone who played this role of a clown. That was like their role for the tribe. And anytime there was a person that couldn't be made fun of, this is what I heard, that was something to look at for the whole clan to look at. Like, why can't we, whether it's the clan chief or the priest or whoever it is, if there's anyone that we can't make fun of, then let's look at that and investigate why.
Yeah. I love that. Yes, I certainly am not even close to being extremely knowledgeable about indigenous cultures, but from things I've read and also talked to people about, the fool shows up in many, many aspects, and it's actually a holy person who does that. And even, we see that in other cultures too, in different ways. But I love that. Yes. And we need to have that within ourselves for sure. Is that fool that will pop up and say, you're getting so serious. You are so important. You are the only person who can fix this problem, blah, blah. And it just make fun of all that stuff and say, be here, be human. That's what I just, once upon a time, I was a Swami for 17 years. And the thing that I most didn't like about it was because of my title and the fact that I wore orange, people had a tendency to put me on a pedestal. I was not ready to be on any I'm still not. I definitely wasn't ready to be on a pedestal, and they set you apart. Oh, that one can do it. But I can't. Poor little me, who's not a Swami, who doesn't have a fancy title, I can't do it. But you're just the Swami, me in this case, I was another spiritual seeker who had studied a lot and had good intentions, but not someone superior, even slightly superior. It's been said a million times, everybody knows this, but I love it. Baba Ram Dass loved to say, we're all just walking each other home. That is super meaningful to me. And I strive to be aware of that with ourselves, within myself. Am I being open to everyone, caring about everyone, even if they believe differently? And I want to keep that openness of heart and openness of mind, that I can listen to other people and learn from other people, even if we're in completely different philosophies. But when people are sharing and listening to one another, there's so much richness in that. So I much prefer to being a Swami, being a regular person in the world, because I don't want to be on any kind of pedestal. We should all be on the same pedestal, not my own pedestal.
Maybe
no.
We all are on the same pedestal.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, I've heard you speaking about the importance of honesty and vulnerability, and I'm considering that in what you're sharing and the importance of being aware of it, right? And I noticed that there's a real tendency to rank human beings, especially in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And I've heard people speak about it almost to kind of put themselves down, like this other person, is so far beyond me, and that's great for them. I'll probably never get there. This is where I'm at. That's it. And I'm wondering if this is another trap of the mind that the mind does, and the ego of thinking that it is even possible for me to rank human beings and where they're at, spiritually.
Yeah. You can't do that, because In the same way, I can't look at, I hear someone's having challenges in their marriage, for instance. I can't look at that marriage and say, well, it looks to me like so-and-so is doing this and so-and-so is doing that. I have no idea. We don't know what happens in the intimacy, not just physical, but also the psychological and the complex intimacy of a marriage. I can never look into somebody else's and figure out what's happening. I can never know it. I can hear what people say to me, but I can't know. And we also, human beings, are really complex. Every one of us. I don't care what your education is, what your experience is. We're all complex. And also, I want to say, I've been a yoga practitioner and even teacher for a very long time. But I have learned some of the greatest things from people who were brand new, who would look at everything with a fresh eye. Or when I'm teaching, I like it to be in a class where people can ask questions, we can have conversation, because I love fresh ideas. I don't want to just be reading my old notes again and again and again. I make it fresh, keep it bright. It's like eating every day, fresh ideas. And some of them, I think, well, that's fine for them. That doesn't work for me, but fine for them. But truly, truly, truly be open, if you can, to the gems of wisdom, or the seeds of wisdom that come to us in so many little as well as big ways. That's, I think it's very important. Yeah.
I think your emphasis on remembering that human beings are really complex, it feels very important to me. There's a little story that popped into my head that when I was younger, I used to love Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. I don't know if you know who that is, but he used to tell.
I certainly do. I know him I did know him very well. Yeah.
So he used to tell this story about Yossela the miser, he was called. And I'll try to be brief with it, but I think it's powerful.
I love stories, Avi. Tell your story. Yes.
So it was, back in Eastern Europe somewhere in Shtetl, which is, a little Jewish community, and very, very poor community. And there was one man that was very wealthy, and his name was Yossela. And for years, people would come to him, and they would come to his house, and he would greet them very openly and give them food and drink and have them sit down and ask them about themselves and their story. And they would tell them all about their lives and tell them all about their lives. And at the end, often they would say, Yossela, please, if you could, spare, whatever the denomination is, $100 or I don't know. That would mean so much to me and my family. And as soon as they brought that up, he would be, outraged. How dare you ask me for money? And he would kick him out of their house and, he'd say obscene things to them. And he did this again and again, and developed the reputation of being called a miser because he wouldn't give anything. And years passed of this, and he died. And he had made so many enemies that they didn't even bury him in the cemetery, which is like, the ultimate insult that you could have. They buried him outside of the cemetery. And so after he died, the rabbi of the community, he started to get these visitors that came to his home, and they would tell him that, Rabbi, I'm just in such hard times, and can you please help me out? Is there any way that you can help me out? And, the first person that came, the rabbi, say, yeah, sure. I'm not a wealthy man either, but, here, you could take a little bit of what I have. Then the next person came, and the next person came, and he was like, what is going on? That all of a sudden at one time, so many people are coming, and he started to ask them questions, and he found out that every week, before the Sabbath, like a parcel with some food and some money would arrive at these people's doors, and they wouldn't tell anyone about it. They just kind of accepted it gratefully, didn't know who it was coming from. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they find out that Yesala was giving to everyone, every single week. This is what he would do, but he wanted it to be secretive. He didn't want anyone to know. So that's why he asked all the questions. He would know exactly what everyone needed, and then he would give it to them. And the rabbi realized, like, oh my gosh, this person that we were calling a miser was really, such a saintly being, so I just, that story, I think, just comes to me when you talk about how complex human beings are, and the mind seems to have a tendency to want to judge and believe that it can know, where someone's at one way or another. And so I don't know about you, but I have this practice that I'm working on all the time, and it's just humbling myself. It's humbling my mind when I think I can know, when I think I can make a judgment of someone else that I don't really know.
I think that's beautiful, and thank you for telling one of Rabbi Shlomo's stories. Did you ever meet him?
I did a few times, actually. It's interesting. It's one of the earliest memories I have. When I was a child, he came and he played a little concert in my house, in my living room. My family was kind of involved in that community growing up. And I just remember, like, I think he put me on his lap, and I just remember how it felt to be with him. It was a burst of extreme love that I had never experienced before, that stayed with me.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet him and sometimes be a hostess to him a number of times. And a beautiful soul. Yeah. So, that's a beautiful story, Avi. Thank you. And just that a beautiful way of dealing with our ego wanting to pop up. Oh, did they notice what I did? Did they tell somebody what I did? My wonderful, kind gesture to the world. Did they tell people? But if I love that idea of just low key, keep it low key, and watch out for that. The ego's not our enemy. Sometimes people talk about it as if it's our enemy. But it's a tool. It shouldn't be in charge. So it's kind of like maybe AI in a way. It's a tool, good tool, but it should not be in charge. So the ego should not be in charge. So it's really good to be aware when that starts to come up and say, did anybody notice what a wonderful talk I gave? Did they hear that I helped this person who was in pain? The ego does all kinds of stuff like that. And it's fine. We don't need to push it away, but just say, again, that sense of humor. Have a sense of humor. And I think if
you mentioned that it's a tool, so it can be productive in some way. Can you speak a little bit more to that? How do you feel that your ego is a positive tool for us?
Well, it's our individual sense. It's our I sense. And please, I don't know all the Jungian philosophy or really any philosophy about that, except that the ego, that I sense, which is important for functioning. Otherwise, there's no reason for us to talk here today. We're all one. We've got all that inside us. But as in our human form, we exchange ideas and we help one another. And I don't pretend to totally understand it, but I do think of that as a tool. And I like to think, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And I have plenty of weaknesses, believe me, but I try not to let them I try not to let that hold me back in my path. And I think the I sense helps. As long as we have minds, we have brains and so on, it's important to use these tools we've been given. And I think when we reflect on what is disturbing me, what is bringing joy up in me, that's the I, that's the ego that is looking at that and identifying with those things. So as long as we're using it, and that's not it's not in charge. That's all.
I love this, looking at it as a tool. And like what I'm considering now is, is the tool of the ego or separation, right? It kind of, does it play on top of the oneness? Like the oneness is true, that we are all connected to each other, but then there's the separation on top of that, and the ego, and how I use that tool. Does it have an effect on the totality, on the oneness?
Well, the oneness is actually above that tool. It's above that. And the real full feeling and understanding of oneness and the greatness of the universe, of God, however we like to think of that, is beyond the mind's grasp. So the mind itself is our tool, of course. A great tool, wonderful, wonderful tool. And we like to keep it as sharp and clear as we can. It's very full of stuff, but it can take us really far. Our sharp intellect and so on can really take us deep, and the real fullness of everything is beyond the grasp of the mind. It's like the rocket ship. The mind is the ship that takes you far, far, far up into the Star Trek universe or wherever people are going. But at a certain point, you have to, the part of it drops away and you just need to go. beyond. I don't know if that was clear, but anyway, the mind is a fabulous, fabulous thing, but it it cannot grasp it. There's oh gosh, it's in one of the Psalms that it says something like, gosh, it might be Psalm 139. I can't remember. There's something like it's David is talking to God in the Psalm. It's a Psalm of David. He says something like, "Your greatness is so much, I can't grasp it. I can never understand it." And in similar ways, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the same thing to, I mean, not Krishna, but Arjuna says the same thing to Lord Krishna. At a certain point, he just has to, it's beyond. Krishna gives him a full experience, and it's too much for Arjuna's limited understanding to handle. And he really gets way off balance, to say the least. So then Krishna brings it back to earth, back to the problem they're working on. But so the ego, the mind, we have so many wonderful tools, and I really don't like when people talk about it as an enemy. Any of these things. These are, in my belief, I'm not saying everybody believes this way. In my belief, these are God-given tools.
How could it be otherwise?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So to try to say, oh, that tool God gave me is nothing. That's really very not very respectful or gracious. Say, okay, I don't know how to use this screwdriver, but it's here in my toolkit. Why don't I find out how I can best use it?
Love that. Without destroying it.
I don't want to destroy it. How does this work? What does this go into? What screw? I'm clearly not a handy person, but I've used screwdrivers. So what screw head does this go into? And then how do I use it? And so on. I think of it that way.
Prakash, thank you so much for sharing today and for your practice, because I feel your heart, and that's such a gift. Every time I'm around you, I feel your heart. So something you're doing appears to be very beneficial as far as this one's perspective.
I'm under construction. Always.
Well, that's a part of it. That's a part of what I feel is you're emphasizing that. That's very refreshing.
Thank you, Avi. Yeah, I think also, part of realize the knowledge that you're not better than anybody else. Nobody's better than you. We're all humans in here. I think part of it also is being open to hearing where our missteps might be, our misunderstandings might be, and being, whether I'm hearing it from another person or suddenly being aware of it as I look, why did that affect me so much? And why am I so mad? To look at it and find out where I'm missing some understanding. I always appreciate it if people point things out to me. So I think being open to that, we're all growing and changing. I'm a lot older than you, Avi, and I still am learning, studying, growing. So I probably will be all my life. It keeps our lives interesting.
Yeah. Embrace the never ending,
Yeah.
hopefully progression.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so much, Reverend Prakash. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this content and think others might as well, please feel free to share and subscribe.